So today we're going to be going through how to crochet the Modda Hobby Kit's duck crochet kit. And I thought I'd show first off everything that's inside of the kit that you'll get. So let's go ahead and crack her open and see what's all inside. Alright, so inside your kit you will find first, and of course most importantly, the yarn that we'll be using to make our duck nice and soft and fluffy. You can also find the QR code on how to get to the video course, but if you're here you probably already know that because this is the video course. Our pack of notions, so we have our crochet hook, our tapestry needle, our stitch markers, everything we're going to need to make our duck. Then we also have the written pattern, which is printed really nicely for you here inside of this booklet. Then we also have the safety eyes for our duck and all of the cute accessories that comes with. So we've got his glasses and the clothes inside of here. Alright, and we also have inside of the box all of the stuffing that we're going to use to stuff our duck. So that's what comes inside of your kit. Let's go ahead and get started with the crochet part of our kit. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is crack open our notions bag that has all of our stitch markers and our tapestry needles and of course our crochet hook. So you'll want to use this to mark each of your rounds as we work. All the other ones you can set aside. You may need them later. And then our tapestry needles we're going to use to sew in the ends whenever we get towards the end of the project. So you can set these aside for now too. For now all we need is our hook and our stitch marker and we're ready to get started. Alright, so we're going to start with our yellow yarn and our crochet hook, and we need to begin by tying a magic loop. So to do that, we're going to make sort of like a finger gun here with our left hand using our index, middle, and thumb. And then we'll take about 5 inches of our yarn and then using our index finger and middle finger and thumb, pinch that tail to those 2 fingers. Then with our right hand, we're going to flip our hand over and wrap our yellow yarn around the top digit of these 2 fingers. Flip our hand over and cross the yellow yarn over what we already have and pinch with our thumb. Then flip our hand again, wrap it around the bottom 2 digits of our index and middle finger. Then flip back over one last time, take that working yarn and snug it behind your thumb to hold everything in place. Then we have all of those things wrapped around our left hand. We're going to take our crochet hook and slip it underneath the loop closest to our fingertips and use the hook part to hook that bottom loop and bring it underneath the top loop. Then when you have those hooked, we can flip both of our hands over and then take our right hand and bring it up alongside our left hand. Then using our right hand's index finger and thumb, we're going to pinch the loop on our hook and the loop still on the back of our fingers. Once you've got all of those things pinched, you can let go with your thumb and gently slide your fingers out. Once we've got that, we're ready to start tensioning our yarn. So to tension it, we're going to take our left hand, index finger, and then we're going to take the tail of our yarn that's still attached to our ball of yarn. This is called the working yarn. And we're going to put it over our index finger. And then you can see I also have my other finger sort of wrapped around that to kind of help tension it, hold it tight. Then we're going to take our middle finger and thumb on our left hand and pinch that twist. You can see right here, we're going to just pinch that. Once we've got that pinched, we can let go with our thumb and index finger on our right hand. And then we'll take our hook and grab that yarn that's over our index finger and pull it through that loop to lock our magic ring, our magic loop in place. Once you do that, you can actually let go of everything because it locks this loop and it keeps it from sliding or becoming loose or coming untangled. Then we can take our left hand and untangle the tail. That's this part here that's not attached to our ball of yarn. We can untangle that tail from our magic loop. And we're ready to get started adding single crochet stitches to our magic loop. So when we work this first round of our magic loop, we're going to work under both the tail and the loop part of our magic loop. So let's start off by making our first single crochet stitch. To do that, we're going to take our crochet hook and we're going to go from front to back through the magic loop that we've made and underneath the tail and the loop. Then we're going to grab our working yarn with our hook and pull it through that loop and pull up just a little bit to pull a loop through. Then to finish our single crochet stitch, we're going to grab that working yarn one more time and pull it through both of the loops left on our hook. I also like to sort of tighten this first stitch by grabbing it with my thumb and index finger on my right hand and pulling it over to the right a little bit. And then with all amigurumi projects, we like to mark this first stitch because it tells us when we've reached the end of our round. So I'm going to take that stitch marker, one of the ones from my Notions bag, and I'm going to slip it through both sides of that stitch. It sort of makes a V. And that will tell me when I've reached the end of my round. Alright, so we're going to continue adding single crochet stitches to this magic ring. If you look, our pattern says we need 6 inside of this magic loop. So to do that, we'll go the same way we did before, from front to back through the magic loop, grab our working yarn and pull up, then grab our working yarn and pull through to create our second stitch. And we're going to keep adding stitches until we have 6 total. So we have 2. Let's make another one together. Front to back through our magic loop, grab our working yarn and pull through both. So we'll keep adding until we have 6 single crochet stitches inside. Alright, so you can double check how many stitches you have by counting how many V's you have on your magic ring. So our first one's marked, and you can see the V of the stitch, so that's 1. Here's our second V, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we never count the one on our hook because it's sort of like a stitch in progress. Alright, so I have all 6 of my single crochet in my magic ring. So I'm ready to do the magic part, which is to take that tail and to pull, which closes the center of my magic ring. And I'm ready to start my second round. Alright, so we're ready to start round 2. So to start a round in amigurumi, we have to take our stitch marker out because that's the first stitch of our round. So I'm going to go ahead and slip this stitch marker out. And our second round calls for increases in each stitch all the way around. So to make an increase, we're going to place 2 single crochet stitches in the same stitch from the previous round. So to do that, and to make a single crochet in a previously made single crochet, we're going to take our hook and we're going to go underneath both of those V, the little legs of the V of the stitch. So let me show that again nice and slow. We'll push through both sides, and then we'll make our single crochet stitch like normal by yarning over and pulling through, and then grabbing and pulling through again to finish the stitch. And then since this is our first stitch of the round, we also need to mark it. So we'll grab that stitch marker, and we're going to slip it through our first stitch. But now we need to make an increase, so we'll have to put another single crochet stitch in the same space. So you can see that hole where my first stitch is, I need to put another one there. So I'm going to go from front to back and grab my yarn, pull up a loop, and grab my yarn again and pull through to finish my single crochet. Alright, so now that I have my first increase done, I need to continue increasing in every stitch all the way around. So I'm going to go to my next stitch. You can see it's my next V right here. I'm going to put my hook through, draw up a loop, draw through both. I'll do the same thing again in the same space. And I'm going to keep increasing until I get to my last stitch, which is the one on the other side of our stitch marker. Alright, so I have finished this round and increased in each stitch all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and give my magic ring tail another tug just to make sure it's tight. And then I'm going to trim it so it stays out of my way while I work. Alright, so that wraps up our second round. Let's move on to the next. Alright, so for round 3, we're going to continue increasing, and we're going to start our first repeating pattern for increasing. So if you look, the pattern has some instructions inside of an asterisk. So we're going to repeat that sequence until we get to the end of our round. So let's do that. We'll go ahead and take our stitch marker out, and then we're going to start by placing just one single crochet in our first stitch of the round. So again, front to back, grab our loop, and then we're going to mark that because it's the first stitch of the round. And then our next stitch needs to be an increase, so we'll put 2 single crochet stitches in the same place. And then those asterisks are telling us that we need to repeat that sequence of 1 single crochet and then increase all the way around our piece until we get to our last stitch. So let's do one more sequence of that together just to kind of get the hang of it. We'll go 1 single crochet in our next stitch, then an increase in the stitch after, and we're going to keep repeating that sequence until we get to the end of the round. Alright, so I have finished my last stitch of the round, which is an increase, but let's talk about some troubleshooting here. So let's say you finish this round and you didn't end on an increase, you ended on a single crochet. That means somewhere in this round we may have accidentally skipped either an increase when we needed to increase or a single crochet when we needed a single crochet. But don't worry, it's actually rather easy to fix mistakes in crocheting. All we need to do is pull that last loop up and then take our hook out. And then if you look, you can see where your mistake might be. So I usually start with my first stitch and I count, okay, here's my first one. Here's an increase coming out of the same hole. Okay, that one's good. 1 single crochet, increase. You can count the V's all the way around. And let's say you found your mistake, it was right here. You were supposed to make 1 single crochet, but you did an increase instead. To get back to that spot and correct, take your tail, what we've been using to crochet, and carefully pull your stitches until you get to that spot that you need to correct. Then you can take your hook, go back through that loop, and then pick back up in your pattern and correct your mistake. Alright, that's my mistake fixed. We're ready to move on to the next round. Alright, so we're ready for round 4, and we're going to start off by placing one single crochet stitch in the first stitch of our round. Whoops. So there's my first single crochet. And then we're going to place an increase in the next stitch. And then we're ready to start our increase pattern of placing one single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches and then an increase afterwards. So I'll place one single crochet here, another one here, and then I'm going to increase. And then we're going to repeat that sequence, everything that's inside the asterisk, until we get to our last stitch of the round. And in that one, we're going to place just a single crochet stitch. Alright, I'm on my last stitch, and I'm going to place one single crochet inside. And I'm ready to move on to my next round. Round 5, we're going to continue our increasing pattern by placing one single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches. So here's my first stitch. Don't forget to mark your first stitch. And then I'm going to place an increase in the next stitch after that. And I'm going to continue that same sequence all the way around. Alright, there was my last increase, so I'm ready to move on to my next round. Alright, so for round 6, we're going to continue increasing, starting with one single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches. So here's my first stitch. Then we'll increase in the next stitch. And then we're going to start our asterisk repeats, starting with one single crochet in the next 4 stitches. And then an increase in the next stitch. And then we're going to repeat that sequence all the way around until we reach the last 2 stitches of our round. And that wraps up this round. But before we move on to the next round, let's talk about the right side versus the wrong side of our work. So the side that we've been looking at this whole time, the one that is always facing us, is the right side, and that's the side that we want on the outside of our finished plush. The wrong side is the side that has our magic ring tail and all of these little bumps on it. So as you're working, your work is probably already starting to kind of curl a little bit. You can see mine is too. Sometimes we need to help our piece out a little bit by encouraging it to curve the correct direction. So you see how I just sort of pushed the wrong side so it's on the inside of that cup shape, and the right side so it's on the outside? We'll need to do that occasionally as we work until eventually we have enough rows that it just stays sort of cupped the direction we want it to be. Just a little heads up as we keep working. Okay, let's move on to the next round. Alright, so for round 7, we're going to be continuing our increase pattern by placing 1 single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches. So here's my first. And then an increase in the next stitch. And then we're going to continue that sequence until we get to the end of our round. Alright, I'm on my last stitch, which is an increase. And that wraps up this round. Let's move on to the next. Alright, so for round 8, we'll continue our increasing by placing 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches. So here's my first stitch, and then of course mark it like I have been. I'll mark it a little better than that. And then we're going to increase in the next stitch. And then we'll start our sequence of increasing by placing 1 single crochet stitch in the next 6 stitches. And then an increase in the next stitch. And we're going to repeat that sequence until we get to our last 3 stitches of the round, where we're just going to place 1 single crochet. Alright, I've got 3 more stitches left to go, so I'm going to place 1 single crochet in each. And that wraps up this round. Alright, so for round 9, we're going to do our last increase round. So we're going to make 1 single crochet stitch in the next 7 stitches. So mark our first stitch. And then after we've made our 7, we'll make an increase in the stitch right after. And then repeat that sequence until we're all the way to the end of our round. Alright, I'm on my last stitch, which is an increase. And I'm ready to move on to my next round. Okay, so for rounds 10 through 17, all we need to do is place 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. So we're just going to go around and around for 8 rounds total, putting 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. So I will see you when I get really close to the end of round 17. Alright, Alright, so I am wrapping up the end of round 17, and I'm ready to move on to round 18, where we're going to start decreasing so that we can close off the bottom of the duck's head. So we'll go ahead and get started by taking our stitch marker out, and then we're going to place one single crochet stitch in the next 7 stitches. So here's my first. Don't forget to put your marker back in. Alright, so now that I have my first 7 stitches in that sequence we're going to be repeating, we need to do a decrease. So when we decrease in 𝗬𝗓𝗡𝗖𝗓 with single crochet stitches, we will go through the next stitch, just like we normally would, and yarn over, and draw up a loop. But then rather than yarning over and finishing our single crochet, we're going to repeat that same process in the next stitch. So we'll take our hook and from front to back go through our next stitch, yarn over, and then we're going to draw through all 3 loops on our hook to finish off our decrease. So we're going to repeat that same sequence of 7 crochet stitches followed by 1 decrease all the way around. Alright, so here are my last 2 stitches, and I need to do 1 more decrease. And that wraps up this round. Let's move on to the next. Alright, so for round 19, we're going to go ahead and take our stitch marker out, and we'll place 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches. Then we'll place a decrease, and we're ready to start our sequence, which will be to place 1 single crochet stitch in the next 6 stitches, and then we'll decrease in the next stitch. And then we're going to repeat that sequence all the way around until we get to our last 3 stitches. Alright, I'm on my last 3 stitches. All I need to do is put 1 single crochet stitch in each to finish off this round. Alright, let's move on to the next round. Round 20, we're going to continue decreasing, and we'll start by placing 1 single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches, once we have those first 5, we'll decrease. And then just like before, we're going to repeat everything inside of those asterisks, that same sequence, all the way around. Alright, I'm at my last 2 stitches, which I will place a decrease in. And that wraps up that round. Alright, so we're ready for round 21, and we'll begin by placing 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches, followed by a decrease, and then we'll start our sequence by making 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches and decreasing. And then we'll repeat everything inside that asterisks all the way around until we get back to the last 2 stitches of our round. Alright, I'm at my last 2 stitches, so I'm going to go ahead and place a single crochet in each. And that wraps up that round. Alright, so for round 22 we're going to continue decreasing by placing one single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches. And then a decrease afterwards. And we're going to repeat that sequence all the way around. Alright, here's my last decrease. And that wraps up this round. Alright, so before we move on to round 23, we need to put the eyes on our head and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my last stitch long to keep it from coming out. And then I'm going to flip my head over so that this stitch is at the back of the head. And I'm going to place my safety eyes, which you will get inside of this little packet here. Go ahead and pull 2 of your safety eyes out. The pattern says that we would like to attach them between rounds 12 and 13. So we're going to take the stem of our eye and let's count together to find rounds 12 and 13. So this one here is our first. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And it's actually the row between where we'll attach our eyes. So I'll go ahead and push the first one through and then grab my second eye. And it says that they're about 4 stitches apart. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. And in that 5th stitch, I can push my eye through a second time. Now, of course, this is kind of up to you where you'd like to place the eyes. If you want them to be a little further apart, you can move one or the other out this direction, but it might also be a good idea to grab the glasses and see if you like the way the glasses look with the eyes where they are. So they'll sort of slip along the side of his head, and I kind of like how that looks personally. I like that it's sort of on the inside of the lens of the glass, so I'm going to leave them how the pattern has it written. Once you've got your eyes in the spot you'd like them, we'll grab the little plastic backs that come with the eyes, and we're going to click them on the backs here by pushing until they snap in place. Repeat that on the other side. Then we're going to stuff the head. Alright, that's the head stuffed for now. We'll probably add more stuffing as we go, but let's keep working around. Alright, so now that we have the safety eyes attached, we're ready to go ahead and continue working for round 23. So we're going to take our hook and reinsert it back into that loop that we drew up really long before we stuffed the head, and then pull our working yarn. And we'll start by placing 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And just like all the rounds before, don't forget we need to mark the stitch. Then we'll follow that with a decrease. Then we're ready to begin our sequence of decreasing. And we'll start by placing 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches, and then a decrease afterwards. And then we're going to repeat that sequence all the way around until we get to our very last stitch. Alright, I am on my last stitch of the round. I'll go ahead and place a single crochet in, and I'm ready to move on to my next round. Alright, so we're on round 24, which is our last round of the head. Go ahead and take our stitch marker out. And for this round, we're going to place 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch, and of course mark that stitch, and follow that with a decrease. And then we're going to repeat that same sequence all the way around. And I am ready to fasten off. I will do that by taking my stitch marker out And then I'm going to slip stitch to the stitch that my marker was in. So to do a slip stitch, we're going to go just like we would for a single crochet from front to back. We'll yarn over and pull through, but then we're going to keep pulling through until we've pulled through all the loops on our hook. Then we're going to go ahead and cut our tail, and we need a little extra because we're going to use this to sew the head on. So cut yourself maybe 14, 16 inches worth of your tail here. And then to fasten off the rest of the way, we'll take our hook and we'll pull that loop until our yarn comes all the way through. And then we'll tighten that slip stitch until it ties a knot. We're also going to add just a little more stuffing into the head here. So that wraps up the duck's head. Let's go ahead and make the body next. Alright, so let's start the duck's body, and we'll begin just like we did with the duck's head by tying a magic loop. So remember, we'll cross our yarn over, take our hook, grab that top loop, slip the bottom loop underneath. We're going to pinch all of that together, tension our yarn, and pull through. And we'll untangle, and you're ready to get started. And we'll begin by placing 6 single crochet stitches inside of our magic ring. So here's my first, and don't forget, we always mark our first stitch even if it's in a magic ring. So I'm going to slip one of my stitch markers through. And let's make 5 more. And then we'll pull the tail to close up that round. And we're ready to move on to round 2. Round 2 will increase in each stitch. So remember, when we increase, we put 2 single crochet stitches in the same place. So here's my first, and I will, of course, mark it. And then in that same space, I'll place my second. And I will do that all the way around. Alright, that wraps up round 2. Round 3, we're going to continue increasing by placing 1 single crochet stitch in our first stitch of the round, marking that stitch. And then 1 increase in the next stitch. And then we're going to repeat that sequence all the way around. Alright, that wraps up that round. Okay, so for round 4, we're going to continue increasing. This time we'll put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches. So here's my first. And then we'll increase in the stitch after. And we're going to repeat that sequence all the way around. Alright, that's the end of that round for me. Round 5, we're going to continue increasing. This time we'll place 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches. So here's the first. And after those first 3 stitches, we'll increase in the next. And just like before, we're going to repeat that same sequence all the way around. Alright, that wraps up round 5. Let's move on to round 6. So we're going to start by placing 1 single crochet stitch in each of the next 4 stitches. And then we'll increase in the next. And just like before, we'll repeat that sequence all the way around. Alright, that's row 6 done. For round 7, we're going to continue increasing by placing 1 single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches. And once we have those first 5, we'll place an increase in the next. And just like all the rounds before, we're going to repeat that same sequence all the way around. Alright, that's round 7 done. Alright, so for rounds 8 through round 15, all we need to do is put 1 single crochet in each stitch. So I will see you whenever I get close to the end of round 15. Alright, I am wrapping up round 15, and I'm ready to move on to round 16. So for round 16, we're going to start decreasing, and we'll do that by placing 1 single crochet stitch in each of the next 5 stitches. So here's my first, so I'm going to mark it. Then when I have those first 5 stitches, we're going to place a decrease. So just a quick review on a decrease. We'll go through, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then go through our next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through all of the loops on our hook. And we're going to repeat that sequence all the way around. Alright, and that wraps up this round. Alright, so before we keep working, we need to divide the body in half because we're going to continue working one leg and then we'll attach to the other side and work the other. So I'm going to take this loop on my hook, I'm going to pull it up long, and then I'm going to count out 18 stitches here. So we'll start with the one on the one that our marker's in, so that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. And I'm going to take these 2 stitches, the one with the marker and the one that I have pinched in my fingers here, and I'm going to open my marker up and slip it underneath that 18th stitch that I've counted. And I'm going to close that because that splits my body in half. So we're going to continue, we didn't even have to take our yarn off. We're going to continue working around on this side to form one of the legs. And then when we finish this leg off, we'll come back and reattach and then work around this side to make the other leg. Great, so now that we have those divided, we can make our round 17 through 19. And to do that, we're going to single crochet around just 1 in each stitch. So we're going to go really carefully here on this first stitch because it's a little strange having to kind of swing around. But all we need to do to start working this round is we're going to kind of rotate our piece. And then we want to make sure we're going through, we want to go from the front to the back. We don't want to come in from the inside to the out. But we're going to go through the stitch on the other side of our marker. So here's our 18th stitch that we've got pinched. We're going to go from front to back through that 19th stitch. And that single crochet that we've just made is the first single crochet on this leg. So we'll take a new stitch marker and we're going to mark that first single crochet. And then we're going to just place 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. And we'll do that for rounds 17, 18, and 19. Alright, I am wrapping up round 19. And you can see our duck's leg is already starting to form on this side of the body. So let's go ahead and move on to round 20. And round 20 we will begin by placing 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches. going to decrease the next 2 stitches, and we'll repeat that sequence all the way around. Alright, that is round 20 done. For round 21 and 22, we just need to place 1 single crochet stitch all the way around. So I will see you at the end of round 22. Alright, I am approaching the end of round 22. Here's my last stitch. And then before we move on, our pattern's telling us that we need to stuff the upper half and then a little bit of the leg that we're working on. So we're going to go ahead and pull this loop that's on our hook long so our work doesn't come undone. And we'll grab some more of that super soft stuffing, and we're going to go ahead and put some inside of the upper half of the body. Alright, and then we're also going to add some inside of the leg here. Alright, I have added my stuffing, so I can continue working on this leg. Alright, so we're ready to work round 23, so we're going to take our hook and we'll reinsert it into that loop we drew up long, and then pull our working yarn. And for round 23, we're going to continue decreasing by placing 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches. So here's our first. And then we'll follow that with a decrease. And repeat that all the way around. Okay, we're ready to make round 24. So all we need to do for round 24 is put 1 single crochet stitch all the way around. Here's the last stitch of round 24. And we need to add a little more stuffing to the inside of this leg. So again, we'll pull up that loop a little long, grab just a little more fluff. And then we are ready to work round 25. So we'll reinsert our hook. Go ahead and take our stitch marker out. And for round 25, we're going to put a decrease in every stitch all the way around. So we're going to decrease. Don't forget to put our stitch marker back in to mark our first stitch. And we'll keep decreasing. And then we are ready to fasten off on our leg. So to do that, we'll go ahead and take our stitch marker out. Then we're going to slip stitch to the next stitch, the one that our stitch marker was in. So again, to slip stitch, we'll go through our next stitch, yarn over and pull through both the work and through the loop on our hook. And then we need to cut a little bit of a tail because we need to close up the bottom of this foot. So cut yourself about 6 inches or so. Then we'll pull through, so we'll take our hook and pull our yarn, and then tighten that. And then I'm going to put just a little more stuffing in the very tip of the foot here. And then I am ready to close up the foot. So to do that, I'm going to take the yarn tail that I've cut, and then using one of the tapestry needles from my kit, I'll thread that yarn through the eye. And then I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to sew through each of the 6 stitches that are left on the bottom of my foot. So I'll just take my tapestry needle. I'm going to go from front to back just like I would if I were crocheting, underneath. And then I'll do the same thing on the stitch next to it. And I'll just keep working around. So here's my last stitch. And then I'm going to very gently tug to close the bottom of the foot. Then when I've done that, we need to tie a knot and weave this tail in. So the way I like to tie my knots is I will loop my working yarn, what's threaded through my tapestry needle, over the surface of my work, and then I'll take my needle and slip it underneath and then up through that loop, and then when I pull, it ties a knot. So now that I have a knot tied, I'm going to take my tail and I'm going to weave it in to my piece. I'm going to keep weaving by sewing long stitches on the inside of my work. I'm going to do one more. Then when I have that woven in, I can take my scissors and by pulling that working yarn and cutting, it hides the tail inside of the body. Alright, so let's move on by getting the next leg attached and working around. Alright, so let me get you started on how to make the other leg. We're going to follow the same pattern starting from round 17 all the way around to form our second leg, but it's a little tricky trying to figure out how to attach the yarn sometimes, especially if you're new to amigurumi. So let me walk you through how to get that done. So we're going to take our hook and we're going to go through the stitch. So I'm looking at my piece, here's my marker here. I'm going to go through the same stitch that my marker is in on this side. Then I'm going to take my yarn and I'm going to make a little loop here with it. Then I'll hook that on my hook and pull that loop through. And then I'm actually going to keep pulling until the tail of that loop comes through. And then we're going to tie this on so that it's attached to our work. So we'll just tie a regular knot, like a square knot as if you were tying your shoe. Once that's tied, we can take this tail and kind of stuff it inside of the body because we were not going to need it anymore. Then we're going to take our hook and reinsert it into the same loop that we just tied to. And then we will draw a loop up. Alright, so now that we have our yarn tied on, we're going to go ahead and go through that same stitch that we just went through that we tied our yarn on. And then we're going to yarn over and draw the yarn through that loop. Then we're going to continue single crocheting around as normal, just like we would for round 17. So we'll go through our next stitch, yarn over, draw up a loop. So I worked all the way around and I am at the stitch marker here on the other side. So I'm going to go through that stitch that it's marking and create a single crochet. And then we're actually going to need to place a single crochet stitch inside of the stitch across the way that we fastened on to be our 18th stitch. So we kind of need to like stretch our hook over a little bit, and then just like with the other leg, we'll flip it around and go from front to back. So I'm going to go through and make that last single crochet stitch. It can be a little tricky to get with the other leg. If the other leg's in your way, you can kind of hold your hand behind. I'm going to take that stitch marker out now that we're all the way around. And we are good to continue working this leg like this leg on this side. Alright, so I have finished my second leg and I'm getting ready to fasten off, but before I do, I wanted to point out that there is a little bit of a gap between both of the legs, which is totally normal. So when we cut the tail for this leg, we're going to use it to kind of help sew this gap closed. So we'll go ahead and fasten off. I went ahead and slip stitched already. We're going to cut a little bit of a longer tail, so maybe 8 inches this time rather than 6. And then we'll take the crochet hook and pull to have our slip knot, and then tighten that. So before we sew that gap closed, we do need to close off the bottom of the foot just like we did before. Alright, so now that I have fastened off and I've tied my knot, we're going to weave our tail in and up to this part here on our duck's body. So go ahead and just push your tapestry needle into the leg, and we can slowly weave the tail up through the inside of the body and over to the gap between. Then before we start sewing, we're going to want to tie another knot, because if we pull this, we'll pull the tip of our duck's foot in, which we don't want to do. So we'll do the same thing we did whenever we fastened off when we tied a knot. We'll tie another knot down here by looping our thread over, bringing our yarn up through that loop that we've made, and that'll prevent us from pulling the fabric of the tip of the foot down while we sew. Then to sew the gap between the legs closed, we're just going to run some long straight stitches between. So I'm going to go over and sew, and then when I pull that stitch, it'll bring the fabric together. Do the same thing on the next stitch. Sew through, and then give that a tug, which closes the gap between the legs. Then we can fasten off for real this time by tying one more knot. And then weaving that tail end in, up somewhere into the duck's body, and then maybe over a couple other random places, just to make sure that tail is really woven in. Then we can go ahead and take that extra tail and cut. And that is the duck's body complete. Alright, so let's make the duck's beak next. So we're going to take the really cute little skein of orange, and we'll go ahead and make the beak. So using this orange yarn, we're going to tie another magic ring. So do that. Remember, we'll wrap, and then we're going to grab that lower loop and pull it through. And lock everything in place. And then untwist. And then inside that magic loop, we're going to place 6 single crochet stitches. So here's my first. Don't forget, we need to mark our first stitch, always mark. So there are my first 6 single crochet stitches inside my magic ring. So I can go ahead and take that tail and give it a tug, which closes up that round and gets me ready for round 2. Round 2, we will place an increase in each stitch. So there's round 2 done for me. So for round 3, all we need to do is put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. So there's my last stitch of round 3. And then for round 4, we're going to start by placing 1 decrease. We'll mark that. And then we're going to slip stitch in each stitch all the way around. So again, remember, we've been using a slip stitch when we fasten off. You'll go through your next stitch, and then you'll draw your yarn over through both of the loops on your hook, both your work and the hook, the loop on the bottom of the hook. So we'll slip stitch all the way around. And that wraps up the beak. And we don't even need to slip stitch to the next stitch to fasten off because our last stitch was a slip stitch. So we're going to go ahead and cut a long tail. And then we'll fasten off by just pulling that last slip stitch through. And tightening. Alright, so now that I've fastened off, we need to weave in the magic ring tail. So I'll go ahead and thread that through my tapestry needle. And sew it to the back side of the mouth. And then I'm just going to put it through a couple of stitches so that I can cut it short. So now that we have the magic loop's tail woven in, we can go ahead and thread our tapestry needle with the tail left over from the beak. And then we want it to have sort of a beak-like shape. So we're going to sew the corner of this down onto the duck's head, just down and then up through the inside of the mouth. And then we're going to continue sewing the beak on by just sewing it through both the inside of the mouth and the fabric of the head. So we're going to want to do the same thing here on this other side. We're going to want to sew the corner of the beak down so it has the shape that we want. So I'm just going to sew up and through, which attaches the beak on. And it's a little posable, so if you want it to be more open or you want it to kind of be closed, it's up to you what you want the shape to be. Then once we've gone all the way across and sewn the beak on, we can go ahead and fasten off by tying a knot. And then we can weave the tail from the beak just into the duck's head. And then we'll cut that short. And the duck's beak is attached. Alright, so last we need to make the wings. So we're going to go back with our yellow yarn. Start off with a magic loop. Then once we've got our first 6 single crochet stitches placed inside, we'll go ahead and pull that tail tight. And then we're ready to move on to round 2. So for round 2, we're going to increase in each stitch. You can also mark. And then for rounds 3 through 9, we just need to put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. So I will see you whenever I get closer to round 9. Alright, so I am wrapping up round 9. Moving on to round 10, we're going to do some decreasing. So we'll put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches. Followed by a decrease. We'll repeat that all the way around. Then we're going to put a little fluff inside the wing. I'm going to pull that last stitch up a little long. Alright, reinsert my hook. And we're going to keep decreasing by placing one single crochet in the next stitch. And then a decrease afterwards. And we'll repeat that pattern all the way around. Then we're ready to fasten off, so we can take our stitch marker out. And we're going to slip stitch to the stitch our marker was in. And then cut ourselves a long tail because we're going to use that to sew the wing onto the duck's body. And then pull our last stitch through and tighten. I'm going to take a little more of my fluff and add it. And then I am ready to close up the top of my wing. I'll do that by threading my tapestry needle with the tail. And just like the legs, we're going to sew through the remaining 6 stitches. We'll pull tight to close off the top. And then we're going to tie ourselves a knot. And then we don't have to weave this in because we're going to use it to attach the wing onto the body. So we need 2 of these total. So let's make 1 more and then we can begin assembly. Alright, I have both of my duck's wings complete, so I'm ready to begin assembling the duck. So I'm going to start assembly with the duck's head, and first I have a little fluff left, so I'm going to add the remainder of it into the duck's head. Alright, so now that I have the head fully stuffed, I'm going to go ahead and take the tail left over from the head and thread it through one of my tapestry needles. And then we're going to get it attached to the duck's body. And when we attach, we're going to be sewing in this round here. So we kind of have to squish the duck's head onto the body a little bit. And then we're going to take that tail and we're going to just whip stitch through the top of the duck's body in about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6th round here in the duck's body. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull that first stitch through. And then I'm going to keep whip stitching around, kind of smushing the duck's head onto the body. I'm going to keep whip stitching around. Grabbing the fabric of the head and the fabric of the body. And I'm going to work all the way around until I get back to where I started sewing. Alright, so I have finished sewing all the way around the duck's head, so it is attached to the body. I can go ahead and tie a knot. And I'm going to weave that tail in just like I've woven in all my tails by sewing it a few times through the body. And then I can snip. And that is the head attached to the body. So next, let's go ahead and get the wings attached. So we'll go ahead and thread the tail of the wing through our tapestry needle. And then we're going to attach the wing about 1 row down from where the head is attached. So we're going to attach it here. And I'm going to go ahead and just send a straight stitch through to bring the wing up. And then we're going to just attach it by sewing into the fabric of the body and then into the fabric of the wing. So I'm sort of holding the wing flat against the body and then just tacking it on by sewing through the top of the wing and some of the fabric of the body. And then I'm going to actually sew a little more. I want to attach the underside of the wing on as well. So I'll whip stitch through the fabric of the body, grab some more of the wing, and just keep working my way around. Until the wing is attached. Once I have the wing attached, I can go ahead and tie a knot. And just like all the other tails, we're going to weave this one into the body. And then cut. And then we need to repeat that same process on this side with our second wing. Alright, so I have both arms attached to my duck, so now it is time for us to accessorize. So inside of your kit you should receive a really cute top and hat. He also has a little bag, and like I had out before, he has a pair of sunglasses. So let's go ahead and get him all dressed up. And just like that, our duck is complete and fully accessorized.